Hey, you guys. So I just wanted to come on here and I guess do a part 2 to an unintentional series that I've been doing. It started with my video entitled Nigger Fights. There goes my monetization. And for those of you that watched that video, you know that we went into a historical slave narrative where the slave in question, he was talking about his life on the plantation, and he spoke about why he never tried to achieve freedom. And it was ultimately the comforts of the plantation. He even enjoyed fighting other Black people for the entertainment of the white masters. He enjoyed shucking corn. There were several things about the plantation. He called them the joyments that he enjoyed that made him not want to escape the plantation. And I was drawing a correlation to our behavior now and what holds us back from revolution being the joyments of our positioning. And so this one, hi Cass, this one is called Slave Against Slave. And we are going to be looking into a much less discussed aspect of slavery and correlating that into behavior that we see prominent in the Black community now, in the hope that we can be introspective about how we may have carried on some behaviors and taught behaviors to our children generationally that are actually rooted in our oppression. And I was inspired to specifically research this because of several things that have happened. But the precipice of it was last night when I was on a panel and I specifically asked the question, why do you have to diminish and drag and demean the Black community and so yourself in order to make a point? And as I listened to a content creator I respect talk about how when he tries to make meaningful content, he does not get numbers, but if he puts on some fuck shit, then everybody shows up to the room. And I thought, you know, somebody said about my channel once, and I've mentioned this before, I think it was Olivia the Oracle that said it. Shout out to Olivia. She said, well, your channel is boring. And I said, my channel isn't an entertainment channel. I'm not here to entertain you. That's not my goal. My goal is not to be a clown for you. My goal is not to distract you from your regular schmegular life. My channel is designed to be serious. And when we talk about serious things and serious issues, that's not always entertaining, but it can be pleasurable from an intellectual standpoint. So with that said, I want to just go into some research that was done. I'm going to be in my description box putting a slew of resources for you guys, historical resources that talk about all the things we're going to cover in this video. And when I mean a slew, I mean an obscene amount. So if you've ever really wanted to dig into the history of our people, the description box of this video, which I will fill out after we go through this, that will be the place for you to be. Okay, that's definitely going to be presenting a lot of documents that you have never ever seen and never ever heard of. But I want to start by taking a look at this book. And this book, the dangers of this book is that this book won a lot of awards, Slave Against Slave. And this book won a lot of, and I want to just go over some of what I spoke of. Now, let me start and say here, I don't like the author. I don't think he's shit. And I don't like the fact that he was the one to present this information. But I do want to just talk about what is in it. And I want to just ask, is there any truth to this presentation? That's just my question. You guys can, you know, slice it and dice it any way you want. But I just want to get to the question of, is this true to life? Wait, am I sharing my screen with you guys? I don't think I'm actually sharing. Hold on. Sorry. All right, now I'm sharing. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so I want to just read a passage. I'm going to be reading some passages, and then I just want us to discuss them. So it says, nearly lost in the historical thrust, however, were the stresses and strains inherent in the enslaved condition. By the early 1980s, historian Peter Clochin observed that the conceptual misuse and abuse of Bascom's work had produced, and Bascom is another person that wrote on antebellum slavery specifically. If you haven't read Blasingame work, I encourage you to read it. Sometimes it's good to read the different perspectives. So Blasingame was a lot of work that people have written about Black people is about the camaraderie that Black people have amongst each other. And to some degree, that's true. When we see each other, we acknowledge each other. Nobody taught us to do that. It's like built into our DNA to, no matter where we are in the world, if we see another Black person, acknowledge them. Even my son was saying when he was in Japan that it was that way. And these were Black people from other parts of the earth. It's like you see that Black skin, and mind you, it's just if we see Black skin, because there are people who a lot of you wouldn't consider Black who are as Black as us, and we see them, we may not give them the same acknowledgement, but that skin will make us look their way. And then if they are a person that considers themselves Black, right, there will be a mutual acknowledgement that we have seen each other, that we recognize there's more than one of us here. And it's almost a sign of respect and camaraderie that's built into our DNA, right? So it says that misuse and abuse of his work had produced a developing portrait of antebellum slavery that presented an exaggerated picture of the strength and the cohesion of the slave community. Let me repeat that. To this point, and through Blasingame's work, people in the world, how they look at Black people is they have a belief about us that we have a camaraderie amongst ourselves as Black people. And to be true, we whenever we have looked at history, we see Black people often unified in struggle, and that looks a lot like camaraderie. We march together, we fight together, we suffer together. Like it reads like camaraderie, does it not? But if we were in such close cahoots and in love and in support of each other, our community would look very different. So let's talk about something that is not normally talked about. So it says, there's a portrait of antebellum slavery that an exaggerated picture of the strength and cohesion. And maybe I can blow this up so you guys can read it too, because I like legitimately don't think you guys can see this. So let's see. I'm gonna try to make it a little better, because what is the point of me presenting something just so you guys can look at a square, you know, a rectangle you can't actually in any way, shape, or form read? So hopefully you guys can read it at this point. So hold on, I have to move it so I can see it too. Okay. So it says, the scholarships celebratory emphasis on the positive steps slaves took to cope often overlooked the harsh realities of their condition. Not true. When we hear slavery portrayed, we're all sticking together. There was camaraderie, and that if we were family, we were hanging in there. We hear this narrative like, what happened to us? We used to all, each other. Now it's all falling. I want to present some information today and challenge you to ask, has it fallen apart? Or have we always had the level of kind of headbutting that we see amplified here on YouTube? So let's just see. It goes on and says, the scholarship's celebratory tone and emphasis on the positive steps slaves took to cope with bondage often overlooked the harsh realities of their condition. Conceptually, the slave community had to convey an artificial sense of solidarity and lack of division in the quarters. Conceptually, the slave community had come to convey an artificial sense of solidarity and lack of division in the quarters. Clotian cautioned students of slavery against the glorification of harmonious, idyllic slave communities virtually devoid of conflict. So there's these two polars, right? On one polar, Black people can't stand each other. On the other polar, we're all just kumbayaing together and hugging. We're all one mind. We're all a monolith. I mean, how many times have you heard people say, we're not a monolith? We're not a monolith, right? So we know that these narratives exist about Black people. We either can't accomplish stuff, can't work together, can't do anything, or we are literally just singing kumbaya off in the corner somewhere, and we're just unified because we're Black and we're strong and we stick together. But there's something in the middle that people don't talk about that existed even in slavery. And right now, I would say in 2020, Black people are portrayed as a very broken group of people that have no cohesion, and we are fighting not to be considered a monolith. We are not all the same. We are all different. We essentially have no culture. There's like literally no similarities about us, down to the fact that we don't even have a culture. The slavery, antebellum slavery perception of Black people is that we were just all stuck together and strong in our slavery, and slavery made us one, and we really were a monolith back then. We were a strong, proud people, and as long as you had Black skin, we loved you and supported you, and we did what we could in our condition. These are the two narratives of Black people. So let's bring in something that's a little bit closer to like something that makes sense and challenge our views of how our ancestors truly viewed each other, and ask ourselves, do we still treat each other this way today? And is our treatment of each other and the lack of cohesion, the lack of being on either of those polars, is that affected in any way by behaviors and traditions about how we treat each other that have been passed on generationally? So it says, ample evidence abounds challenging the overstated emphasis on communal solidarity among slaves. There was nothing easy or automatic about the formation of a slave community. Communities of any sort are not necessarily the products of a creative process, and a number of factors posed obstacles to the construction of a viable slave community. In the colonial era, sex ratios heavily skewed in favor of slave men. Now, I want to talk about this. This is the ratio of men to women we have now. There are more available Black women than there are Black men, because remember, a significant percentage of our men are incarcerated and are killed young. So I've covered this statistic before. In America, when Black people are born, there are more Black males than there are Black females. But as we reach into the early 20s, we see that Black women outnumber Black men. So we have similar dynamics today as in as we had during slavery. So that's the first thing it points out, that in the colonial era, sex ratios heavily skewed in favor of slave men, and that affected the formation of slave families. Bondspeople, physical alienation from Africa, the disruption of their established kin networks, and the influx of Africans of varying ethnicities and rival tribes prevented any smooth transfer of culture. And a lot of times we think, oh, these Africans were just as Black Americans, and they weren't. Right? We were just all Black, our own. We all had our own culture, special to us in America because we share a common struggle and being Black, like it because about our life of our birth. Oh, am I borging? Oh, you guys, am I borging? Hold on, let me stop for a second. I'm borging bad. Okay, let me go downstairs. Hold on. Hold on one second. So let's see. I'm borging bad, huh? Let's see. Am I still borging, you guys? Let me know, because I've gone down a floor. It's actually been snowing out here by my house. The woods are beautiful and snowy. Okay, I've come like very close to my modem. I'm good now? Okay, that's because I went downstairs. You guys know that I have challenges because I live in the middle of nowhere. There's woods behind my house and it's snowing. So all of these things combined do not make an easy situation for my Wi-Fi. Okay, hold on. I'm going to sit on something while I talk to you guys. Because I came into the room where my Wi-Fi is. So what I was saying is that this idyllic picture that was painted of Black people in slavery doesn't make sense. That's the assertion of this author, because being Black was nothing special in Africa. Being Black was nothing special in Africa. It was nothing unique. We have an acknowledgement of our Blackness now because we have been oppressed globally and we've been oppressed in this country. But back then you had Black people from different tribes. Google Wi-Fi mesh. Oh, okay, Mr. Granger, I'll look into it. We had Black people of different tribes, different communities, sometimes rival communities, and they were trying to make them all live as one people simply because they had brown skin. So it was actually difficult to establish of community And we can replace slave community with Black community, because that's the Black community, the Black community. Now we're going to transpose the word slave community with Black community. Wait, there's no sound? The sound is going in and out now? Hold on, you guys. Is the sound going in and out now? Is it back? Okay. All right. Well, let's hope we don't have technical difficulties. Hopefully I can do this. Hopefully I can do this tonight, because like I said, y'all know I live in the middle of nowhere. So if it's too sketchy, then I'll just try to do it another time. But let's see. You guys let me know if you can hear me or if there are any problems, okay? So I want to talk a little bit about the divisions amongst slaves. The slave community was, in fact, ridden, it says riven, but I'm going to say ridden with strife. And slaves admitted as much in their narratives and autobiographies. Now, I want you guys to note the things that slaves fought over, okay? They fought over character, like, was this person a good person or a bad person? Do I like them? Do I like what they're doing? They fought over color, the color of people's skin. They fought over their condition, like if you were in the house or the field, if you had, were able to work in town, so the various conditions that they were in. And they fought over the superior importance of their respective masters. So the importance of white people in their lives. Does this sound familiar? I'm just curious. Are these not the same things that our community constantly fights over and constantly harps on today? Character, right? We're always calling somebody's character into question. We're always playing judge and jury over the character of another person. Not saying that's never appropriate, just saying that that is something that we still do today. Color, I know there's been a great controversy over people's skin color and whether they are Black enough or truly Black. I definitely heard somebody say yesterday that you can look at somebody's phenotype, and if they have light skin, that they are not truly Black. And I thought, well, if that's the case, I guess my mom's not Black, my grandma's not Black, my sister, who has two parents that are my color, and two siblings that are her color, apparently she's not Black. But skin color was something that they fought over even back then. Condition. So we definitely, even today, we still fight over condition. You have some people that think that they are above other people because they have more money, because they grew up in certain neighborhoods. You also have people who are more disenfranchised, who feel that they are a different group of people than Black people who have more advantages. And it also says that they fought over the superior importance of the respective masters. So the importance of white people in the slaves' lives. And so I find that to be very interesting. This part of my house is not as quiet as a part of my house as I like to be in. So I wish that it wasn't snowing or that I didn't live in the woods, y'all, because this is like more of a communal part of my house. So you might hear like my family and things about, since I think all of the rooms that it could be very quiet in are not on this floor. And then if I go up a floor or down a floor, I think it's going to affect my, my internet. All right, so let's continue. Slaves sought to fill deep emotional longings when they scrounged for scraps of status. Slaves sought to fill deep emotional longings when they scrounged for scraps of status and distinction, however they might. So my question is, do we in 2020, did we in 2019 find ourselves as Black people having arguments over status, basically scraps of status? That's what this author, and I want you to know something. I checked this author's resources and they're solid, but let's be clear, this is a white man talking. And he's basing his data on slave narratives of Black people, all of which I have looked at and I will be putting in the description box. And although I am disgusted that this white man wrote this book and that Harvard University and all of these reputable institutions, that they find this book to be absolutely brilliant, I did see the value in bringing this information to you and asking you, is there any validity to this? Do we fight over scraps of social status? Do we sit there and try to, in a society where overwhelmingly we don't have superior social status, sit there and fight amongst each other over who is better than the next at the bottom of the pool of America? So I would say myself, yes. It says slaves sought to fill deep emotional longings when they scrounged for scraps of status and distinction, however they might. Some satisfied cravings for superiority over neighboring bondspeople on the basis of their master's wealth and prestige relative of less affluent slaveholders. So this is the proximity to whiteness. And so for example, if your proximity to whiteness is that you are in proximity to wealthy whites, then your status was better. That would be the educated lame, as so many people like to call them. I don't like to use that word because I am married to a man who is a doctor and he is not like this. And I would say that he is educated. He's definitely not lame, but he's educated. I grew up in what some people would consider not wealthy by any means, but definitely upper middle class. And I would not consider myself to be an educated lame either. But definitely speaking, we do see in the Black community that Black people who have close proximity to white wealth deem themselves to be of a superior social status. And the historical record shows and the historical record shows that our ancestors did the same thing. They based their social status on proximity to white wealth. Cassandra said, they love to call us slaves. I wonder if that's why we call ourselves that, because we think whites are important. I don't know. I don't know a lot of Black people that call themselves slaves per se, but I know that for this video, I said slave against slave because I'm speaking to a mentality, right? So in this case, I say slave against slave because I'm speaking to a mentality. Are we holding on to a mentality of bondage? Are we holding on to old behaviors and ideologies in 2020 without even realizing it. I mean, this is worth, if we can look at a historical record of our people's behavior at the darkest time of their existence in this country, and then here we are in 2020 and we are behaving the same way, we've got to step back and go, whoa, maybe we're doing this because we've passed on this toxic behavior. Maybe we need to stop. Right? We seem to think that we have somehow become less of a cohesive community since slavery. Is there any validity to the argument that a lot of what the divisions we see in the Black community now are rooted in old traditional lines that we drew when we were trying to make ourselves feel better during slavery times? Okay, so let's see. Yes, Mark Dave. Okay, so let's go ahead and just take a look at this. All right. So it goes on to say that slaves sought to feel deep emotional longings when they scrounged for scraps of status and distinction however they might. Some satisfied cravings for superiority over neighboring bond people on the basis of their master's wealth and prestige relative to less affluent slaveholders. Even within the confines of a single plantation, a few bragged over the elevated purchase price the owner sacrificed to acquire them or the generous offers for them that the master rejected. So their value, their cash value as people, whatever that was. So this is why when whites hold a Black person in high esteem, we view them as better, right? So I'll give you an example. Every single celebrity, every single athlete, every single actor, we have Black people that are absolute trash, but because society, white society, has decided that they have value, they have a cash value to them, that they are valuable Blacks, we hold them in high esteem. And you know what? They hold themselves in high esteem as well. I would say that that has not changed. We feel that a Black person, see the average Blow Joe Schmo on the street, the average Black person who nobody knows their name, major media hasn't put them on TV, we tell them they're nothing. But the more acknowledgement that you get from the society that has control, the more important that you are. I would say it's even worse today than it was in slavery because we don't get to pick. And we don't get to pick. And this is massively disseminated to us. So I would say that being elevated has not changed. It says anytime a slave owner inequitably distributed rewards or provided opportunities to some slaves, but not others, the beneficiaries might lord their preferential treatment over fellow bondspeople. We do this today. Do we not do this today, you guys? For example, how many times have you heard the narrative, well, so-and-so was able to make it, so-and-so became a CEO, so-and-so got hired by that company, so you don't have an excuse. Inequitable distribution of privilege, where a few select slaves were given an equitable distribution of benefits and opportunities, led to a situation that during slavery made them a higher social status and then considered better than the other slaves. But the inequitable distribution of those opportunities was at the hand of the slave master to give. So it was, if you were preferred, you would get it. Do we not see that today? Do we not like to hold up people who are the beneficiaries of an equitable distribution of opportunity? An equitable meaning not equitable, not even. We see that control, power, positions in corporations, positions in media, positions in government are not equitably distributed amongst Black people. They are inequitably distributed. And yet, although we can clearly see that the distribution is inequitable, we do the same thing that our ancestors did, and we give those people a higher value and social status. And we divide the Black community based on all of the things that have been mentioned so far. We divide the Black community just like slaves did. We divide the Black community over color, over character, over condition, over our proximity and importance to the respective master. We divide the Black community based on our proximity to white wealth. We divide the Black community in who is important or who is valuable by how white people value us, i.e. our celebrities and such. We divide the Black community based on who was able to attain benefit from an equitable distribution of opportunity, the same as our ancestors. These are the same things that we use to determine what people in our community are more valuable than others, what people in our community deserve a voice, what people in our community have made it, what people in our community are good examples, what people in our community are part of our community or have a higher status in our community. We use the same divisions today. It's no different in 2020. A lot of people say, well, Black people are always looking at the past. Well, you know what? Sometimes it's beneficial to look at the past because you will not know that you are engaging in a behavior that reaches back 400 or 500 years if nobody talks about the fact that our people have always done this. This is not new. You know what would be new? Stopping this stuff would be new. Stopping with these levels of divisions would be new, but we haven't even got to the actual fighting between slaves. We're just talking about the first stage of the fighting, right? Isn't this the way that it works? You guys have seen it here on YouTube. The first stage is to puff up your chest and talk about your character. I'm such a good person. I. The second stage is measuring of Blackness. I'm darker than you. I'm lighter than you. I have bigger nose. I have a smaller nose. I have bigger lips. I'm more pure. That's the second stage of division. That's what the slaves did. Do we not do this today? Third stage of division, condition. I have more money than you. I was on television once. I got hired to this company. I drive this kind of car. Next stage of division, your condition. The last stage of division, importance with respect of your masters. I live in a really nice neighborhood. That means around white people. I have a really big house. I hang out with this group of people. I got hired to this company. I've been accepted by white society. That is the next stage of division. I've managed to get up under white people. You have no excuse. That is the next stage of division: character, color, condition, and superior importance with regard to their respective masters. We look at prestige and affluence of each other, and we base that prestige and affluence on the value that we hold to the society at large. If you are poor, you are invaluable. If you get to live in a neighborhood with the white folks, you're valuable. We base it on inequitable distribution of rewards or opportunities that are provided. So if you got to be the token Negro at your corporation, there are 300 people at the corporation and a whole 10 Black people. Well, that's inequitable distribution of opportunity and resources, but you're just patting yourself on the back. If you're the token Negro at the IT firm, you're just patting yourself on the back, right? Elevating our social status. It says, anytime a slave owner inequitably distributed rewards or provided opportunities to some slaves, but not others, the beneficiaries might lord, that means hang it over the other people's head, nah, 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 I got this and you didn't, I'm better than you. They'd hold it over the other bonds people's heads. And you know what? They would often get killed because of it. How many times have we heard in our community somebody getting jacked or getting killed because they were flossing? They were showing off. Oh, so you want to try to act like you're over me. Oh, I'll take that. And that ends with somebody dying. No different in the plantation. There is a quote by an Alabama planter that says, slaves even killed one another after being supplanted by a rival in the confidence of the master or overseer. That slaves would kill each other if they saw another slave winning. Now, they were talking about literally kill each other, but do we not figuratively kill each other too? Just like the rich look down on the poor, do not the poor feel some kind of way about the rich in our community? Slave against slave. But here's the thing. In all of these divisions and all of this mess, they are all still slaves. They're all still slaves. Nothing has changed. They all are still in bondage. They're fighting over whose slavery is more comfortable. I mean, Patrice and Cassandra, I mean, that was me too. I was the token Negro when I worked in real estate in San Francisco. I was the only woman and I was the only Black person. Both. But I never held my position over anybody's head. Like, oh, if I got in here, you could too. Nah, fool, you couldn't get in there too. I was the only one they were going to have. And I mean, that is the fallacy of being like, well, if I did it, you could too. I would never tell anybody that. The people I worked with, they did not flex with Black people like that. They weren't fucking with us like that. They had a Black person. They met their Black person quota. You didn't have an opportunity there. There would be no point in me telling you you could pull yourself up by your bootstraps and become one of the partners, because it wasn't happening. They were at maximum Black capacity with my Blackness. And that might have been the same with you, Cassandra, and that might have been the same with you, Patrice. Bureau of Black Reparations, I don't care if he stays. G. Lowry, that could be valid in some way, shape, or form. It says, on large holdings of more than 50 slaves, the occupational distinction between house servants and field hands bred resentment and conflict. Domestic servants considered themselves the slave aristocracy and often adopted an attitude of superiority toward their lowly, hardworking counterparts laboring in the fields. Now, let's be clear, you guys, that whilst they considered themselves slave aristocracy because they were house slaves, don't forget, you guys, that we went over another slave narrative. And if for those of you who were present for that, what did that man say about house slaves? He was part of the slave aristocracy. He said the house slave is to be even more pitied, because when you almost look white, when you are light-skinned, when you almost look white, white people sometimes treat you worse because they want you to understand that you might look white, but you're not white. And in response to being treated more badly, he said that the house slave had to bow a little lower because everywhere they turned, there was a white person. They had to try to please all the white people around them. That is the plight of the token Negro. That is the plight of being surrounded by whiteness, is you can never take a real breath. You can never relax your shoulders, because every time you turn a corner or lift your eyeballs up, there goes a white person. And yet, what we find is that we had a section of people that, despite the fact that, and we've heard this expressed by many people, despite the fact that they are successful, they can never be fully comfortable just surrounded by white people. They will still hold their position over the heads of those individuals in the community that they feel they are better than, because they have more money, because they have a more solid position, because they have accomplished, quote unquote, more in life. Do we not do that in 2020? Are we not doing that today? Is that not our vibe today? Hi, Adam. Gabriel, this conversation is not about white people. So let's not make it about them. This conversation is about Black people. And any mention made about white people is only as it is relevant to us discussing ourselves. Well, G. Lowry, let's not get distracted. Nothing is ever true 100% of the time. But you yourself can't deny that this is true, because you yourself were pushing back against being judged based on the color of your skin. just yesterday. So in case you missed the list of the divisions that the slaves made amongst themselves, let me repeat them. They were character, skin color, condition, and superior positioning with respect to proximity to whiteness. And it would be disingenuous to say that we don't see these things exhibited in the community today. The same divisions that our ancestors used. But what we have to do is we have to dispense with this mindset. We have to recognize that these mindsets are the mindsets of people who were in a condition and they tried to elevate themselves in their base condition. Similarly to how you had that slave that didn't want to escape into freedom, he said, because of the enjoyments of the plantation. He would rather engage in fighting with other slaves and shucking corn. His words, not mine. You guys remember the slave narrative. I provided it. He would rather do that than be free. Just like we would rather be comfortable in a subservient position than be fully liberated and in control of the socio-political and economic climate of our environment. I speak collectively speaking. We know that within the monolith, right, that is the variations of our Black skin color, there are different mindsets. But collectively, we do have a certain vibe as people that we have to break free of. Hi, Carl's Opinion, and thank you. One second, you guys. Sorry about that. I told you guys, when I'm on this floor, it's a communal floor. I wish I could go to a different floor, but I don't want my things to get choppy. So let's talk about it a little more. It said, okay, so we are about to read an excerpt that was taken from a slave named Rosa Stark. She was from the Carolinas. And I want you to listen to what Rosa Stark said. Rosa Stark said, "A house nigger man might swoop down and mate with a field hand's good-looking daughter now and then for the pure love of her. But you would never see a house gal lower herself by marrying and mating with a common field nigger." This is the narrative of a slave. Do we not hear this today? You get the money, you get the girl. I've literally heard, and we see this is actually being pushed as a narrative in the community, to get money and then go to impoverished places and get yourself an impoverished woman that is attractive. Because you can. But then if a woman were to date a Pookie or a Ray Ray, as they call them, then that is frowned upon. And that is pretty much what this slave just said. If you are considered of a higher social status in your subjugation, then you have the ability to swoop in to the poorer, less important of your group, and you can pick up something of physical quality, a woman of physical quality. But the woman is never to dip down that way if she is of a higher social status. That is a narrative that we still hear today. And a lot of us believe very strongly in this. A lot of us believe very strongly that if a Black man gets money, he should get his pick of the litter. He is in a higher social status than other Black men. He should be picked. Isn't this kind of the heart of the Pookie and Ray Ray versus educated lame argument? Is this slave woman's quote not at the heart of the Pookie and Ray Ray versus educated lame narrative? I ask you. She summed up the whole beef in one sentence. That's the whole beef. Right there. Pookie and Ray Ray versus educated lame, in the words of one of our ancestors named Rosa Stark. She's just shut it there. Apparently, Pookie and Ray Ray versus the educated lame goes back to the plantation. And we are still playing this game today. First, we separate ourselves by those same arbitrary lines. After we've established what Black people are better than others, then we start to mating. Okay, we've established which ones of us are better. Now let's talk about who we're going to sleep with. Who gets who? Who's going to be looked down on? Who's going to be the preferential mate? And the only thing that made this judgment, the only thing that gave these people better status, was that they were favored by white society and that they were in closer proximity to whiteness, to white wealth. And I call it white wealth because it's not our wealth. It's not our faces on that money. We don't have control over the Federal Reserve. We don't have control over the United States government. We don't have control over these systems, so they are not ours. But the attainment of these things that are controlled by another group of people are what determine our status within our own community, just like in slavery. And the same arguments over color, over social status, the same arguments over if we received preferential treatment that was inequitably distributed. The same arguments over Pookie and Ray Ray were going on hundreds of years ago. And here we are in 2020 and we have learned nothing. We have learned nothing about shutting down these divisions. We have learned nothing about shutting down these narratives and doing better as a people so that we are not so divided, so that we are not, what did this man have the audacity to say? He said, this man said that we were fighting over, I want to get the quote just right, because he said, we had deep emotional longings that we were trying to fill. We were trying to fill those by scrounging for scraps of status and distinction, however we might get them. Scrounging for scraps of status. We scrounge for scraps of status. We do not run the country. We do not control the money. We do not control the prisons. We do not control the industry. We do not control the land. So what do? We fight over scraps of status. We sit here and bicker and fight amongst each other over the piddly little status that we have. In oppression. And by oppression, I mean you have no self-agency over anything in your life that is not directly in your face. You don't control the laws that are made, and nobody like you that looks like you has any sort of meaningful input in them either. You don't control anything that makes this society tick. We collectively do not control anything that makes this society tick. So what we do instead of addressing that is we fight for scraps. We fight for scraps of status. We fight for the ability to make ourselves seem distinct from other Black people. I'm a special Black because I have this car. I'm a special Black because I'm wearing these shoes. I'm a special Black because I have this job. I'm a special Black because my skin is darker or it is lighter. I'm a special Black because I have crossover appeal. Scraps of status and distinction in a society where we don't have control over the things that actually author our existence. The same stuff as back then. The act of a people that are heavily oppressed, the mindset of a people that are heavily oppressed, and rather than address that oppression, rather than address their lack of power in their environment, they fight for scraps of status and distinction amongst themselves. Do we do that in 2020? Were we doing that in 2019? Are we going to stop? So we have the house slaves, right? Who think they're better because they're living better lives and they have a higher social status. Their scraps are bigger. And on the opposite side, we have the field slaves who believed in reciprocity. They were suspicious of the house slaves. I don't trust you. I do not trust you. You didn't grow up in the hood. You don't know anything about this. You can't tell me anything. They had resentment. They had mistrust because they felt they were too close to white people. That's what it says. They were too closely allied with and loyal to the master. They were too close to white people. You didn't grow up around us. You don't live around us. We don't trust you. Is that not us in 2020, y'all? Come on. Is this what we do? Is this our mindset? Have we not unlearned this? Just division, 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 division. Division. Hassan, that's not the point. The point is that it is division. It is division. We are divided. This is why we are stuck in our position. Because we are divided. All we do is fight. All we do is bicker. All we do is draw these lines that are stupid. We cannot work together because we will find a line to draw and we will fight over who is on the right side of that line. And while we are busy fighting over who is better and who is right and we know what we're not doing? We're not changing our collective position. Because I can't work side by side to better our collective position with somebody if all I want to do is beef with them all the time. All I want to do is prove that I'm better than them all the time. All I want to do is put myself over them all the time. I'm so focused on the fight with you that we cannot fight the thing that we need to fight. We don't have the manpower and the muscle because everybody wants to be on their own side. Black people have 15 lines of division and everybody wants to stand on their own square and give no room for compromise. Why can't you do you but we work together. I don't need to prove I'm better than you. You don't need to prove you're better than me. I don't need you to hold your education over my head. I don't need to hold my education over your head. We don't need to beef about who grew up where. I don't need to try to genetically test your skin color or your hair texture. We need to be about this work so that we can be in control of the things that author the existence of this society. We need to be focused on socio-political revolution and nothing else. And we look into the mindset of our ancestors to compare it to our mindset today to show that this broken mindset is something that we attained because of our subjugation. But we do not have to think this way anymore. We do not have to function this way anymore. This is not something that we need to do, people. We can stop this. We can acknowledge the fallacy in this behavior that has lived on in our community for generations and do something other than this. You guys know I'm Christian, and 5 days a week I support the cause of an atheist because his cause is about Black children and I am about Black children. Now, I could choose to beef with him because we don't believe the same thing spiritually, but you know what? None of that has anything to do with us helping these babies. So we can leave that division at the door and we can be about this work. And all of us need to do the same. All of us need to do the same. We cannot make other Black people do what we want them to do. This is stupid, y'all. Everybody's not going to conform. And you know what? There's not going to be a standard to conform to because we're all not going to agree on what we should be. If we all agree that everybody needs to be darker than a brown paper bag, there's going to be some people who are going to disagree, or somebody's going to pop out a light-skinned baby one day, and then what? If we all agree that nobody gets to date outside of the race, that is totally fine. But what are we going to do with all the Black people who are mixed? What are we going to do who have mixed kids? What are we going to do with all the Black people who have lineage of whites in their family? What are we going to do with you? You 15 to 25% white person? If we all agree we should all be atheists, what are we going to do with the Black Muslims? What are we going to do with the Black, what do they call themselves? Aboriginals. What are we going to do with the Black Christians? Do you honestly think that we're going to be able to fight and beef our way into unity? You think talking shit about somebody's religion or their skin color? You think talking shit about somebody's grandmother or their cousin? Talking crap about the house they live in? You think that's going to help us get socio-political power? Yeah, let's just all sit here and fight about things that nobody's ever going to agree on. Why don't we do that? You can feel good when you go home that you have slightly more money than the next person. That your skin is slightly darker or lighter than the next person. They're so ignorant. They're Muslim. They're so ignorant. They're Christian. They're so stupid. They're atheist. We could do this. We could do this because we've always been doing it. We have always been doing this. But for 500 years, it hasn't helped us. So maybe we need a new game plan. New plan. New game. G. Lowry, you know what? And this is what I'm talking about. You can't be half white and then come up in here and talk about a fantastical fantasy of Black people being unified. And this is why people look at mixed people and give them the side eye. It's that kind of rhetoric. It's so funny. You'll say that unity is a fantastical, fantasy, but at the same time, people will point out the fact that Chinese, the Asians will have a Chinatown, and they seem to be able to manage unity. So why is it a fantasy for Black people? I would have to say white people have managed unity pretty well. They are a minority who has managed to really usurp the majority. Why is it a fantasy when Black people want to do it? It's not a fantasy when anybody else is doing it. If we cannot speak life into our community, then why even bother with the community? I mean, that's really how I feel. If you cannot speak life into our people, then go about your business. Why even engage in a productive conversation? Why even engage in a space where it's about being positive if all you want to do is be negative? That negativity stuff can be done on your own. And that's not just for you, G. That's just in general. That's for any of us. That's for me. That's for you. That's for the person down the street. If you aren't about building, then don't come to the construction site. If you are not about building and we are over here working and building, then just don't come over here. Don, he's free to voice his opinions. You know what it is over here. You know what it is right over here. He can voice his opinions. G doesn't have to agree with us. As long as he's not disrespectful, he's cool. Mr. Muhammad, yes, they have. But let's be clear about white people. White people will drag each other. So you know that them dragging Black people, it's just easy to drag us because they will do it to each other. But let's be clear. Let's look at South America. Simply because I'm teaching on this right now. South America, white people got together and told the Spanish and the Portuguese they could conquer anybody they wanted as long as they did not do it in Europe. That's sensible. You can go and take anybody's land that you want. Just don't do it to any Europeans. That was the Treaty of Tordesillas. That's what white people do. Once they were able to get their butts out of Europe, they started screwing with other people. They went out into the world and oppressed other people. White people only oppress each other as a last resort. Can we only oppress ourselves as a last resort? Can we only do harm to each other as a last resort? Can our first mode not be to go against each other? So I want to talk about the classes of slaves, okay? So Rosa Stark, the same slave that outlined the educated lame versus the Pookie and Ray Ray of slavery, Rosa Parks went on to explain the entire hierarchy of the slaves. And I want to ask you if this hierarchy sounds familiar, okay? So let's see. It says Rosa Stark outlined the many classes amongst the slaves. So mind you, We're all one community, because in this book, it's called the slave community. In 2020, we call it the Black community, right? We're a Black community with a slave mindset a lot of the time. All right. So Rosa Stark outlined the many classes, and she called it classes amongst the slaves. As she said, she remembered them to her Works Progress Administration interviewer. So this narrative was taken when Rosa Parks was at Works Progress Administration, and they took down what she said. And so this is what she said when she was classifying other Black people. She said that the first class were the house servants. Those were the butlers, the maids, the nurses, the chambermaids, and the cooks. The next class were the carriage drivers, the gardeners, the carpenters, the barber, and the stablemen. This actually sounds pretty familiar. The house slave today, right? The house slave today would be those people who are working in corporate America. The white collar worker, the white collar Black, right? Just under the white collar Black, you're going to have the skilled tradesmen, our electricians, right? Depending on what type of engineer you are, you can border the cusp between the first class and the second class, right? You're going to have your trade labor, your trained labor, that skilled labor. So we have our white collar, then we have our skilled labor. And that's pretty much true today too, right? We're talking people, all these people are earning about 3 figures or more. All these people are earning about 3 figures or more. Then come the next class, which are the wheelwright, the wagoners, the blacksmith. So these are technically skilled labor, but these are people who are going to make a little less, right? They're going to make a little less, or they might even still be making 3 figures, but they're going to be things like your plumbers, right? A plumber is not as glamorous as an electrician, right? And then we start reaching the bottom of the barrel, the cowmen. And then for the first time, she uses the word nigger. She says, the niggers that have to care for the dogs. That have to care for the dogs. And she said, when we talk about all of those people, that they have houses and they don't get beat as much. These people aren't the ones getting drug off to jail. Who can attest for this? Who can attest for this in the community? When you are on the higher echelon of the class, you may have less interactions with the police, right? You're going to have less interactions with the police. You're not going to get in trouble as much. We've definitely heard this before. How many times have you heard, well, I've never had a problem with the police. I've never been profiled. You must have been doing something. If they bothered you, you clearly look suspicious. Have we heard people say that? Have we heard people say that? I'm going to be putting, who asked me that? VChild08. I will be putting this book as well as several resources, maybe like 50 or 60 citations in the description box, but I'll be doing that after the live is over. So when the live is over, give me about 10 minutes, and the book and all of the citations will be in the description box. But it's called Slave Against Slave. If the book is the title of this live, it's called Slave Against Slave. So let's keep moving. She said, then come the field slaves, the craters of the wheat, the threshers and the millers of corn and the wheat, the feeders of the cotton gin. They are the lowest class. They were common field niggers. That's what she called them. That's what she called them. So let's keep going. Or actually, I think I'll pick this up another day. So I wanted to start this conversation first with our divisions, right? I wanted to draw a correlation between 2020 and our ancestors with regard to the divisions that we make amongst each other. And from this, we'll go on to the actual slave fights and the things that the slaves were at odds against within the plantation. And so, yeah, we'll pick it up there because I want to touch on all of these because I think you will find that these are the same things today. Now, does this mean that Black people should get along all the time? No, we're individuals. Obviously, we're going to have problems with each other. But what I am talking about is something that is more communal in nature. It is our inability to collectivize on a grand scale, because whenever we come together, people get caught up in the divisions. People get caught up in the lines that they have drawn and the people they think that are better and those people that don't think like them, that they don't want to work with. You guys know that I collaborate with many different YouTubers and I don't agree with everything that they say or do. But we are able to work together because what we do agree on is that we love our people and we just want to do the best we can to contribute to us being a unit and also to us getting this revolution popping. Let's keep it real. We want to do all those things. But a lot of this has to start with us just not dividing ourselves, because once the divisions have come, then the fighting comes. And I think what I want to cover the next time that we see each other is I want to, well, it may not be the next time we see each other. I think you guys wanted a Bible battle, so maybe we'll do that next time. But in the next two lives that we do, something that I really want to cover is I want us to cover the types of things that they were fighting over. Some of this is just going to be human stuff, like that's my man, you know, human stuff. Other things are going to be things that we really don't need to fight over, but that we have historically always had beefs over within the community. So I just want you to keep in mind just a few points from the first part of this that we looked into. That was divisions in the Black community that are caused by judging character, judging the color of our skin, judging the condition, like the wealth or lack thereof of a person. Also, the superior importance with respect to the master, so their proximity to whiteness. And in addition to that, judging people based on whether or not they have received some inequitable distributed reward or opportunity, or because they are held up as a favorite of white society. I want us to just look at those divisions, look at how we exemplify that attitude in 2020, and think about, can we undo that? Can we stop looking to the celebrity and the people that are upheld by media that we don't control to be the best of the Black community, what we should achieve, those people that we look at and say, I want to dress like them, I want to own that car, I want to sleep with that girl or have that guy. Can we look at those people and recognize that this idea that because white people push them, and I say white people because who controls the media? Who is pushing these people in our face? Who is funding their music? Who is funding their movies? These athletes, these people. Let us not look at the inequitable distribution of benefits or opportunities to these people and place them on a pedestal higher in the Black community, because that is how we are often manipulated and infiltrated. Let us not divide ourselves over color. Let us not do the Pookie and Ray Ray thing that our ancestor was talking about. I mean, you heard her. You heard Rosa Stark. Apparently, Pookie and Ray Ray reaches back to the plantation. Let's not divide ourselves over that. So just think about these divisions. The book, in case you guys want to read it so that you guys can participate like more actively in the next discussion, is going to... okay, Bureau of Black Reparations. Hold on. Let me deal with you. I'm just going to deal with you really quick because I don't have the energy nor, like, I just don't even feel like being bothered with you. I can't even lie. So with that said, and the same thing here, like, y'all, my channel's not for you guys. Bureau of Black Reparations and Bout It, my channel is not for you. This is not the fuckery channel. That's not my channel. That's not what we do here. It's not what I'm about. I don't want to be bothered with it. You guys take that where it belongs. Don't bring that over here. Okay? So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. The next time that we join together, I want to talk about like the specific sorts of fights that were repetitive in antebellum slavery amongst our people. And I want to see if we find ourselves actually fighting over these things today. And yeah, I encourage you guys to read the book. The link that I provide you, you will be able to read the entire book. Again, I am not promoting this author. I don't like him, but the resources he had were solid, and it does bring up the question. I want us to look, even if it's from the outside looking in, and not to say everything is right, just to say when we hear something that is right, can we acknowledge that? Are we willing to deal with that as a people so that hopefully we can move forward, right? We can move forward without bringing some of these behaviors that have simply gone unchecked in our community because we haven't identified them for what they are overwhelmingly. If we can do something about improving that in ourselves and in the way that we exemplify our behavior in the greater world, especially in front of our youth, I think that we can do better, and then we'll get further. So it's just some food for thought, and I will talk to you guys a little bit later, okay?